Welcome to another deep dive. Today we'll be looking at the Enchiridion by Epictetus.
Okay.
It's this ancient text, but it's basically like a guide
Right.
to mental resilience.
Yeah.
It was written by like this Stoic master.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like having a philosopher in your pocket.
That's a great way to put it. And what's really fascinating is
Yes.
how relevant all this ancient wisdom still is to us today. We're going to explore how these Stoic principles can help you navigate like the ups and downs of modern life.
I'm already intrigued, but maybe before we get ahead of ourselves, can you
Yeah.
give us some context about who Epictetus was?
Yeah, so Epictetus, what's really remarkable is that he
Uh,
actually started life as a slave.
Wow.
And through philosophy,
Okay.
he found this path to inner freedom.
Yeah,
This freedom that no one could take away from him.
right.
And that idea of inner freedom is at the heart of his teachings.
So this isn't just like ivory tower philosophy.
Thanks,
It's
man.
rooted in real life experience.
Absolutely. And one of his core principles is this distinction between what we can and cannot control.
Okay.
So we can control like our thoughts, our actions, our responses to the world,
Yeah.
but we can't control things like other people's opinions, external events,
Right.
or even our own health.
Okay, that makes sense logically,
Right.
but how does that actually help us live a better life?
Yeah.
If we just focus on what we can't control.
Right.
It sounds a little passive, to be honest.
It's actually the opposite of passive.
Okay.
It's about like taking responsibility for your own inner state.
Okay.
So imagine you're stuck in a traffic jam, right?
Yeah.
You can get all frustrated, honk the horn, and let it ruin your day.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can choose to accept the situation
Yeah.
and maybe use that time to listen to a podcast
Right.
or do some breathing exercises or even just observe your thoughts and feelings without judgment.
So it's like instead of being at the mercy of
I see.
external events, we're like the masters of our own inner world.
Exactly. And that's where true freedom lies.
I like that.
And Epictetus, he uses this vivid analogy of a ship to kind of illustrate this point.
Mhm.
He says, imagine you go ashore from this anchored ship to gather supplies,
Okay.
and you might be tempted to get distracted by seashells or pretty flowers.
I can definitely relate to that, getting sidetracked by shiny objects.
Right. But then you hear the captain calling everyone back on board.
Oh,
And if you're too caught up in those distractions, you might miss
Uh-oh.
the ship.
Oh, no.
And Epictetus is saying those external things are like the distractions
Right.
that can keep us from what truly matters.
Gotcha.
Our values, our relationships, our inner peace.
So it's about like recognizing what's essential
Exactly.
and not letting those external distractions kind of steer us off course.
Yeah, I like that.
And this ability to discern between what's essential and what's not is a key part of Stoic practice.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this could be helpful.
Yeah.
But what about things that we do desire in life?
Like, aren't we supposed to have goals and aspirations?
We absolutely should.
Okay.
It's natural to have desires,
Right.
but Epictetus cautions us against clinging
Okay.
too tightly to desires for things outside of our control.
So like wanting to win the lottery?
Well, yeah, or like, for example, it's natural to want your loved ones to be happy and healthy,
Yeah.
but you can't ultimately control that.
So how do we deal with those anxieties, that come with caring about others?
It's about accepting what we can't control, focusing on what we can,
Okay.
and finding a sense of peace within that space.
Yeah.
And it's not about suppressing emotions. Like if someone you love gets sick, you're going to feel sadness, you're going to feel worry.
Of course.
That's natural, but it's the stories we tell ourselves about those emotions that
Okay.
can amplify our suffering.
I'm starting to see how this connects to
Yeah.
modern psychology.
Yeah.
We talk about cognitive behavioral therapy,
Exactly.
CBT, which focuses on how our thoughts influence our feelings and behaviors.
Exactly. Epictetus was way ahead of his time in recognizing the power of our thoughts.
Right.
And this brings us to another key Stoic concept,
Okay.
desire and aversion.
Okay. I'm all ears. Tell me more about desire and aversion.
So Epictetus argues that clinging to desires for things outside our control, like fame, wealth, or even a perfect relationship,
Yeah.
leads to anxiety and misery
Oh, I
because
know.
ultimately those things are impermanent and subject to change.
Right.
On the flip side, excessive aversion to unpleasant things,
Okay.
like sickness or criticism, can also cause unnecessary suffering.
So it's about finding like a middle ground, a place of balance and acceptance.
Precisely. And this
Yeah.
leads us to the Stoic practice of accepting what is,
Okay.
even if it's unpleasant.
Yeah.
It's not about passively resigning yourself to fate,
Right.
but rather choosing your battles wisely and focusing your energy on what you can influence.
This idea of acceptance is really resonating with me.
Yeah.
But honestly, sometimes it feels really hard to put into practice.
Yeah.
Like when I get a negative comment online or something like that.
I understand it's not easy, but Epictetus offers some really helpful tools and techniques
Okay.
for training our minds to become more resilient.
Okay.
And that's what we'll dive into next.
I can't wait. I'm ready for mental workout.
All right.
So we talked about controlling what we can, accepting what we can't, and finding that inner freedom.
Right.
But how do we actually, train our minds to become more resilient?
Mm-hmm.
Does Epictetus give us any practical tips for doing that?
He does.
Okay.
And it's interesting that he compares mental training to physical training.
Okay.
So just like an athlete trains their body to become stronger and more agile,
Right.
we can train our minds to be more resilient
Okay.
and less reactive to external events.
Okay. I'm ready to get my mental sweat on.
Right.
What kind of exercises does he prescribe?
Well, one technique he emphasizes is called premeditatio malorum.
Premeditatio malorum.
It's a fancy Latin term, but it essentially means
Okay.
imagining worst-case scenarios.
Oh, that sounds kind of gloomy.
I know it might sound a bit gloomy at first,
Yeah.
but the idea isn't to dwell on negativity or become paranoid.
Yeah.
It's more about mentally preparing yourself
Yeah.
for the possibility of things going wrong.
Yeah, okay.
So if you've already considered the possibility of, say, losing your job or getting sick,
Mm-hmm.
you'll be less likely to be completely thrown off balance
Right.
if those things actually happen.
So it's like having a mental emergency kit.
Exactly.
So you're not caught completely off guard when
Right.
something unexpected happens.
And it can also help you appreciate what you have in the present moment.
Okay.
If you've contemplated the possibility of losing something,
Yeah.
you're more likely to value it while you have it.
Right. So it's about using our imagination to build resilience, not invite fear.
Exactly.
Okay.
Another technique that Epictetus emphasizes is turning obstacles into opportunities. He uses the example of someone who is physically disabled.
Okay.
While they may not be able to change their physical limitations,
Right.
they can choose how they respond to those challenges.
So it's like focusing on what you can do,
Exactly.
even within those constraints.
Exactly. And this applies to all sorts of obstacles we face in life,
Mm-hmm.
not just physical ones like a job loss, a relationship breakdown, a financial setback.
Yeah.
These can all be opportunities for growth and learning.
It's a shift in perspective, isn't it?
It is.
Instead of seeing these challenges as roadblocks,
Hmm.
we can see them as detours that might lead us to unexpected destinations.
And that shift in perspective can be incredibly empowering.
Yeah.
It allows us to take back control
Mm-hmm.
and choose how we respond to life's inevitable ups and downs.
Okay, I'm really liking these practical tips.
Good.
Are there any other Stoic techniques we can use to train our minds?
Well, one thing that's really emphasized in the Enchiridion
Okay.
is the importance of examining our judgments and beliefs. Epictetus says, men are disturbed not by things,
Mhm.
but by the principles and notions which they form concerning things.
So it's not the event itself that upsets us, it's our interpretation of it.
Exactly. He uses the example of death.
Okay.
Death itself is a natural part of life.
Right.
But it's our fear of death, our beliefs about what happens after death that cause us suffering.
Right. Yeah.
So if we can change our perspective on death,
Mm-hmm.
we can potentially change our experience of it.
It's like that saying, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional.
I love that. And this applies to all sorts of situations, not just death.
Right.
So let's say you get a bad review at work.
Right.
You could choose to see that as a personal attack,
Yeah.
a sign that you're a failure, or
Yeah.
you could choose to see it as an opportunity for growth,
Okay.
a chance to learn and improve your skills.
So it's about recognizing that our initial reactions to things are often based on our own preconceived notions
Yeah.
and judgment.
And those judgments might not always be accurate or helpful.
Right.
So Epictetus encourages us to question our assumptions,
Okay.
to challenge our beliefs, to see things from different perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
He says, if you would be a true seeker of truth,
Okay.
it is necessary that at least once in your life you doubt,
Mhm.
as far as possible, all things.
So it's about cultivating a sense of curiosity and open-mindedness
Yeah.
rather than just clinging to our pre-existing beliefs.
Exactly.
It's almost like a scientific approach to life.
Mm-hmm.
Observe, question, experiment.
I like that analogy. And this willingness to question our assumptions
Yeah.
is crucial for growth and self-awareness.
Okay.
It allows us to move beyond our limited perspectives and
Mhm.
see the world more clearly.
Okay, I'm convinced that examining our judgments is important.
Good.
But how do we actually do that?
Right.
Sounds kind of abstract.
Well, Epictetus, he offers a practical exercise.
Okay.
He says, with regard to whatever objects give you delight, are useful or are deeply loved, remember to tell yourself of what general nature they are, beginning from the most insignificant things.
Okay, so if I'm really attached to, say, my smartphone.
You would remind yourself, it's just a phone.
Okay.
A collection of metal, glass, and plastic. It's not inherently good or bad, it's just a tool.
Right.
And by doing this, you're consciously separating your happiness from the object itself.
It's like taking the power away from the object.
Exactly. And this applies to more than just material possessions.
Okay.
You know, he even suggests doing this with people we love.
Oh, wow.
He says, if you kiss your child or your wife, say that you only kiss things which are human,
Okay.
and thus you will not be disturbed if either of them dies.
Whoa. Okay, that's a little intense.
I know it sounds harsh at first.
Yeah.
But he's not saying that we shouldn't love our families. It's
Right.
about accepting the impermanence of all things, even the people we love most.
It's about appreciating the present moment without clinging too tightly to things that could change or be taken away.
And this brings us back to that core Stoic principle of accepting what we can't control.
Right.
It's a difficult truth, but facing it head on can actually help us live more fully in the present moment and avoid unnecessary suffering.
This is all so thought-provoking.
Yeah.
But it also feels a bit emotionally detached. How do we balance this Stoic acceptance with, genuine human connection and emotion?
That's a great question, and one that we'll explore more deeply in the next part of our deep dive.
So I'm really grappling with this idea of balancing Stoic acceptance, with the full spectrum of human emotions. It's one thing to intellectually understand these concepts,
Right.
but how do we actually live them out?
Yeah.
In our relationships, our careers, our everyday lives?
It's a great question, and one that the Stoics themselves wrestled with.
Okay.
They weren't advocating for becoming
Right.
emotionless robots.
Right.
They recognized that emotions are a natural part of the human experience, but they also believe that we have a choice in how we respond to those emotions.
So it's not about suppressing emotions.
All right.
But about managing them in a way that doesn't lead to unnecessary suffering.
Exactly. And this is where the idea of virtue comes in.
Okay.
For the Stoics, virtue was the ultimate good, the foundation for a fulfilling life.
Right.
And virtue included things like wisdom, justice, courage, and self-control.
So it's about aligning our actions and our emotions with those virtuous principles.
Precisely. And this brings us back to the concept of living in accordance with nature.
Yep.
The Stoics believed that the universe is governed by this rational order, called the logos.
Okay.
And living in accordance with nature meant aligning ourselves with that rational order,
Okay.
both in our inner world and in our interactions with the world around us.
So how does this apply to our everyday lives?
Right.
What does it actually look like to live in accordance with nature?
Well, it can manifest in many ways.
Okay.
It could be as simple as choosing a healthy meal over a sugary treat, recognizing that nourishing your body aligns with that natural order.
Okay.
It could be speaking up against injustice, embodying the virtue of courage.
Right.
Or it could be patiently listening to a friend who's going through a difficult time.
Yeah.
Expressing compassion and understanding.
So it's about making choices that are in harmony with both our own inner nature and the larger natural order of the universe.
And those choices might not always be easy.
Right.
The Stoics recognize that we will inevitably face challenges and setbacks.
Yeah, of course.
But they believe that even those difficult experiences can be opportunities for growth and learning. Epictetus says, with every accident, ask yourself what abilities you have for making a proper use of it.
So instead of seeing challenges as failures, we can reframe them as chances to practice those Stoic virtues.
Yes. And this is where that Stoic idea of turning obstacles into opportunities comes into play.
Right.
So let's say you're passed over for a promotion at work.
Okay.
Instead of dwelling on the disappointment or resentment, you could use that experience to reflect on your skills, identify areas for improvement, and maybe even explore new career paths.
It's a way of reclaiming agency even in situations where we might feel powerless.
And that sense of agency is essential for inner peace.
Right.
The Stoics believed that true freedom comes not from external circumstances, but from mastering our own minds.
This reminds me of something we touched on earlier about not seeking external validation.
That's right. Epictetus cautions us against getting caught up in trying to please others.
Okay.
He says, if you are ever happening to turn your attention to externals,
Okay.
so as to wish to please anyone, be assured that you have ruined your scheme of life.
So it's about defining success on our own terms, based on our own values,
Yeah.
rather than chasing the approval of others.
And this can be incredibly liberating.
Yeah.
It frees us from that constant pressure of comparison.
Right.
And allows us to focus on what truly matters to us.
And this resonates so much with the challenges of the digital age.
Absolutely.
You know, we're constantly bombarded with these images of perfect lives and achievements on social media. And it's so easy to fall into that trap of comparing ourselves to others.
Yeah.
And feeling inadequate.
Epictetus would likely remind us that those images are often curated and don't reflect the full complexity of real life.
Yeah.
And he would encourage us to focus on living our own best lives, guided by our own values rather than chasing external validation.
It's about remembering that true fulfillment comes from within.
Exactly.
Not from the number of likes or followers we have.
Precisely. And this brings us back to the Stoic emphasis on virtue and living in accordance with nature.
Right.
True happiness for the Stoics was not found in external possessions or achievements, but in aligning ourselves with what is good and rational.
This has been such an illuminating exploration of Stoicism. I feel like I've gained a whole new toolbox for navigating life's challenges with more grace and resilience.
Good.
But I have a feeling we've only scratched the surface of this rich philosophy.
There's always more to explore. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about Stoicism. It's not a dogma or a set of rigid rules.
Yeah.
It's a philosophy that invites us to engage in this lifelong process of self-discovery and growth.
It's a journey, not a destination.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's a journey that can lead to greater inner peace, wisdom, and fulfillment.
Yeah.
And if there's one thing I hope you take away from this deep dive, it's that you have the ability to choose how you respond to life's challenges. You have the power to cultivate inner strength and resilience, no matter what circumstances you face.
What a powerful message.
It is.
And one that feels incredibly relevant in today's world. Well, thank you for sharing your insights and guiding us through this deep dive into Stoicism.
It's been my pleasure.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey of exploration.
Yes.
We hope you found something here that resonates with you and that you can apply in your own lives.
Right.
Remember, the path to wisdom is an ongoing one, and we're all in this together.
Yeah.
Until next time, keep seeking, keep learning, and keep diving deep.